Hi, good morning everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us on this morning's webinar. So my name's Neil and I'm joined by my colleague Damien. So it's going to be quite a short 30-minute session today, but I'm going to talk briefly about what we feel slows the pace of companies in today's world, followed by a demo with Damien of what we think helps solve these issues, specifically focusing around finance and HR processes and the benefits a document management solution like DocuWare can bring to you. If you do have any questions during today's session, please feel free to post them in the chat window in the panel on the right-hand side, and we'll be able to answer them at the end. So what does slow the pace of companies in today's world? So information feels like it should be at your fingertips, but it isn't. And instead, managing and storing documents can be very time-consuming, making it difficult to find the information you need later on down the line. And this can have a significant impact on productivity, which in turn can lead to delays in the process. And team resources being stretched, making it more difficult prioritizing one task over another. And people like to know they're in control of the information presented to them, and without a clear and defined list of outstanding tasks to work through, people can easily get behind. Worrying about the security risk of where a document is stored and who has access to it. Are sensitive and potentially critical documents having to be locked away in a room to stop prying eyes? Compliance, security, privacy. As you know, every year there's a new regulation and fines for not complying can be costly. We've seen a few recently from the ICO surrounding Marriott and BA. And technology that's supposed to help is painful to use, and lack of control through existing tools, and in some cases, accessing documents remotely would be a great start. Most people expect mobile-ready applications to assist them on the move, especially when working from home. So let's take a closer look at the DocuWare system, and Damien's going to take us through a short demo now.
Great, thanks Neil. Let me just show you my screen. Can you see that okay, Neil?
Yep, I can see that.
Fantastic stuff. So yeah, good morning everyone. My demo today are just going to be some examples of how DocuWare might help with remote working, automating workflows, but it's important to say that the system can be built however you want it based on your exact requirements. So if you start off with the DocuWare interface, as you can see, this is just a web application, so you can easily access it on any device, wherever you are. And there are also some mobile apps for iOS and Android, which we'll go through in a bit more detail later. You'll see along the tabs, these are to access some of the functionality in DocuWare, and I'll go through each of these as I go through the demo as well. Now, the first part of the demo is going to be a simple invoice approval process, and the first part of that process is to capture those invoices. Now, if you're receiving invoices via email, there's an Outlook plugin within DocuWare, so it makes it really easy. You can see you've got an invoice attached to this document, this email here. So we just right-click it, store in DocuWare, and these are some store options I've created. Again, you can create whatever you like, so I'm just going to store the invoice attachment. If I do it on one that hasn't already been stored, you can see there are blue tags on each of these, and it mentions DocuWare to show which invoices you've already stored. So if I go ahead and do this one as well, once that's completed, that would then change to show that that's been stored. So let's just do that as well. So you can see that's been updated. If we go back to the intelligent indexing tray, we can see these invoices being captured. You'll notice a little gray bar going up and down in the top left-hand corner. And this is something called intelligent indexing. So DocuWare has like an AI which uses optical character recognition to turn images and documents into readable data. And the reason it does that is so that it can understand what the document is, what the index information should be. And there's also a traffic light system you can see here, reflecting the confidence of whether it's captured the information correctly. Now, the document tray, the documents in here don't yet exist in DocuWare. This is like the in tray on your desk before you go and file the documents in a filing cabinet, box file, lever arch file, whatever that might be. And when you file a physical document, you might use an index structure like document type, supplier name, or the month and the year that the document was received. And the idea of intelligent indexing is that it does most of that for you, and you can decide what information is important to you. So if I go ahead and store a copy of these documents, I'll just grab this one and this one. So if you're doing a batch, it's really easy to multi-select all of those invoices and just kind of batch through them really quickly. And you notice each of these fields is green, and these are the index fields. So these are tags which get assigned to that document for multiple reasons, for reasons of searching for those documents, or maybe for triggering a workflow, making decisions, that kind of thing. But if we just kind of go through these, we can see that the areas on the right-hand side, the document viewer pane, these are highlighted so you can visually check to make sure that DocuWare has got this information correct. And there's also something called single-click indexing. So if I go to the order number and just highlight it, you can see it fills it out. But this is also how you teach DocuWare. So we're not using like a fixed zonal pattern to catch this information. We are teaching DocuWare each time. So in order to teach it, we say the order number is here. So next time DocuWare sees that invoice, it's going to be more confident and it'll be able to capture that information automatically. And again, you can see this one here, it's just capture all the details. And we can just click on store. So rather than having to sort, collate, and then file invoices manually, you can just let intelligent indexing do most of the work for you. You can also import documents from network directories, so we can import another invoice here. You can see we can also scan them. We can capture them automatically from a dedicated email account, and we can also use like a watch folder if you're dropping files into folders, so we can capture those automatically as well. You'll probably notice that the lists and the tasks have increased, so these kind of red discs next to those to show that there's a new document that's come into the system and there's something that needs doing to it. And these are really handy to monitor all of the activity within the business, and I'll kind of go through that in the next step. But once you store a document, the idea is to make it quick and easy to find it. So if we choose a search option, we can choose your virtual filing cabinet. So you might have multiple filing cabinets for each department. And you can see I've got a pretty simple and straightforward search dialog here. You can make this more detailed if you want to, but I'm just going to say, let's say somebody calls in and they want to know the status of a particular invoice, or get a copy of that invoice. So we can just say, okay, so let's get you your invoice, and the company name is, let's say, these guys, and click on search. And within a couple of clicks, rather than having to rifle through filing cabinets, searching through network directories, or even asking other people whether they've got a copy of it, you can get straight to that document. You can do something with it. So if I click on the toolbox, you've got some tools here where you can email it. You could add some annotations. You could print it, download it, whatever you like, as long as you have the permissions to do so. If I grab one of these as well, which has a bit more detail on it, so this one has already gone through a process, so I can right-click that and select history. So let's say this company's phoned me up and saying, where is my invoice? I can say, well, hang on a minute, on the 4th of November, it was marked as paid, and it was marked as paid by this person at this time. So really quickly on the phone, I can give them the information that they need without having to search through documents and asking other colleagues. There's also a full audit trail of everything that's happened to that document, so you can see who's opened it, who's edited it. And again, this is really important for GDPR and ISO accreditations to make sure you have that information about everything that's happened to that particular document. Now, there's something else that DocuWare can do that is quite handy, is a full text search. So say if you only knew a word that existed in a particular document. Now, you wouldn't be able to go through a filing cabinet and look for a particular word in every document, but within 2 clicks, I can access every single document that has that word in it. And you can see that word highlighted on the particular document. So it's quite a powerful search tool if you were looking for particular keywords, clauses in a contract, reference numbers, whatever that might be. As long as it's typed information, you can search through it. We also have the folder view, because in some situations it might make more sense just to browse different documents. And this can be like for HR, you might want to browse through employee records, see their particular documents. In finance, I've just got a view with company names, and then you can see these relative documents here. But you can set these up however it makes sense for you to browse those documents. So hopefully you can see how DocuWare can be used as a simple storage retrieval solution and a single point of access. Rather than having to sort or search through multiple points of storage, you just have one place to search for your documents to get the information as quickly as possible. The next thing I'm going to show is how you can take advantage of some of the workflow features in order to automate common tasks and kind of free up your time. When I stored the invoices earlier, I mentioned the lists and the tasks. So if we take a look at those now, so if we have a look at these lists, with a manual process, when you receive an invoice, you might have to print it, maybe record it in a spreadsheet so that you know what's been received so you can track it, and then manually pass that document around the business for authorization. And in this whole situation we are in at the moment, that is even more difficult because getting physical access to people is dependent on their location. So here's a list of the inbound invoices. We can see these in unassigned invoices. So these are the 3 invoices that we've just stored. And that way you have a record without you having to kind of log them manually. And if we have a look at the tasks, this is now what we have to do with those invoices. And DocuWare is really good at putting the actions that you have to do in front of you at the point at which you have to do them. So you're not overburdened with trying to mentally manage all of the other things that you will have to do next. It's just what you have to do right now. So we've got a few tasks here. We're just going to assign these invoices. I'll assign one to myself. And I'll assign this one to a finance manager. Now you see them popping back into the workflow because for the demo purposes, it's kind of me that's authorizing these invoices and processing them through. So this one we've got, which is out for approval. Now, you might have noticed the mobile app, and I'll kind of show that now. So if I just open this in the web interface, and we can just see it on my mobile phone as well. So hopefully you can see these different fields, and they're just mimicking what you can see in the web browser. So I can see my tasks, I can see my lists, I can search for documents, and I can also store them into my trays. If I go into my tasks, we can see we have these invoices. And this is the one that's out for the approval. So this is the one that you can see on the left-hand side in the web browser. You can use your normal tools, pinch to zoom. Each action has a stamp. So you can see here, at which time or which date this was assigned to me. And I can make a decision. I could go and approve that. Apply the approval stamp that you can see here and confirm. And once I've confirmed, hopefully you can see that disappear from the list of tasks on the left-hand side. So really easy to do from your mobile phone. If I also wanted to have a quick search for a document, I go to the finance filing cabinet. I could type in the information, or I can select from a list. So I'm looking for an invoice for a particular company. So I can go and we'll search for this invoice again. And again, from my mobile phone, I can get straight to it. I can zoom in I can see those tasks, and you get a visual history of everything that's happened to that document. Now, if I go ahead and complete this task, actually, before I do, there is also something else. We have the list to record the invoices as they come in, so you can see what's happening. You'll see now my unassigned invoices are reducing. But I've also got, if you have the permissions, to monitor tasks. So if I click on monitor tasks, I can also see that the finance manager has a couple of invoices to approve. And this is quite handy if, say, the finance manager is on holiday. So you could either approve them on their behalf. So I'll just go ahead and approve that. Or maybe you could use the reassign tool to assign it to somebody else. You might have noticed that that invoice that I've just approved on behalf of the finance manager has come back in, because you'll probably notice the value is quite high. So we've got the total value here. So I've triggered a rule to say that anything over a certain value needs to have a director or operations manager approval. So we'll just say, yes, that's fine. You can use the options down here, or you can use the stamps. So I'll just use a stamp here and just put it on there. But again, it just helps with that visual history. And at some point, when you've finished all of the approval process, when you've matched it to whatever information you need to match it, you can complete and confirm that, and that will remove it from the whole task list. So hopefully that's shown you some ideas around a simple storage and retrieval and invoice approval process with manual assignment. I'm going to do something a bit more comprehensive now with a bit more automation behind it. So this is a more advanced workflow with two-way matching from the invoice to the purchase order, and also general ledger coding, and also cost center assignment. So if we show you how that might work. So in my line item capture tray, I've got a few invoices here. So again, let me just grab a couple of these and go ahead and store them. Now, before, the intelligent indexing engine picked up the header information. So, you know, the company name, the invoice number, generally the information you'd receive at the top or the bottom of an invoice. But what it's also done is, if I scroll down, the line item data here, the intelligent indexing engine has also captured that. And you can teach it how to do it per invoice. So we can scroll along here and we can see the descriptions, item numbers, quantities, amounts. And again, this is just a table that I created. You can decide on what information is important to you. So we'll just go ahead and store that. And we'll do the same for this one. So again, we can just visually check to make sure everything's okay. And when we're happy, just go ahead and store. So hopefully you've seen the tasks increasing again. So we're now doing the more detailed invoice approval process. And the reason I've done this is to show general ledger coding. So typically, a lot of the people I speak to write the details on the invoice. So if you go to the line item, they're normally going to physically write the information here. And you can still do that. I mean, if you wanted to, you can just put, you know, your general ledger code here. And you can do that per item. But the idea of using the workflow task is so that you can do this digitally. So if I go into here, we can go into the line item details. Let me just view the document on the right-hand side. So we can see each of the line items. We've got the general ledger codes. And you can make this mandatory if you want to. I've just made it optional for the sake of the demo. I've got this linked to an Excel spreadsheet, but you can link it to any data source or any fixed list or whatever you want it to be. This is really just to give you some ideas. And what I'm also doing is I'm assigning it to multiple cost centers, because in this situation, I need the managers of those cost centers. I need multiple people to authorize that invoice, and I need them to authorize different amounts. So here we go, we've got the other invoice. We can see the line item details here. Just make that a little bit bigger. scroll across, and I'll just put, for the purpose of the demo, just put in a few more. General ledger codes and cost centers. So hopefully you can track what's happening here. We've got the invoices that have gone through to authorization. So we've got this one here. And if we click on the monitor tasks, we can see here that this particular invoice has been assigned to me, the marketing manager, and the HR manager because it is split across multiple cost centers. To show my task, we can reduce that down a bit. And now that those three tasks are just one because I'm going to approve it on behalf of everybody. And you've probably noticed the other invoice went straight to pay. And the reason for this is DocuWare has done a two-way matching process. So it's received the invoice and that's triggered a workflow to check to see, is there a corresponding purchase order? So if we go related documents, purchase order, we can see here's the corresponding purchase order for rapid transport. The purchase order numbers match, the amounts match, so it's automatically done that for you, so a user doesn't have to physically have a look at the documents to try and speed up that whole process. So that's the reason it's gone straight to pay. And again, you can use these options down here, or you can just like stamp it with a paid option. And we'll do the same with this one just to close it off. So now that the process is complete, I can show something that we created, a piece of software called the AMS export tool, to export the information so it can be imported into another system to reduce data entry. And that's kind of part of the reason for doing a general ledger coding digitally, is to try and ease the workload for people having to type that information into Sage, SAP, Great Plains, whatever your kind of finance package might be. So if I just open that now, we've got a couple of different export profiles here, and you can create as many as you like. So this is to export employee data as part of an HR onboarding process. Here I've got one for exporting invoice data. So if I just run this, and then if I go to my invoice export folder, so you can see it's already created the new invoice extract based on the invoice being marked to pay, but you can set this as a schedule to run every day, every Friday, once a week, you know, once a month, whatever that might be. And it's extracted each of the line items, the costs, the amounts, the line item data. And that's how we can integrate with other applications to, reduce data entry, streamline the process, reduce people's workload, and hopefully make things a bit easier for everybody. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of where DocuWare might fit in a finance environment, where it can help manage the documents, but also help automate some of the processes. But again, those are just for some ideas. You can figure out how it would work best in your environment. The next thing I was going to touch on is HR. So in this situation, I have got a vacancy request form. And this is another thing that DocuWare is really good at, is providing forms, either public or private, so that users or maybe suppliers or candidates in this situation can fill out forms. It can create documents, so it can create one document, which is just this form, or any of this information that you're entering can be merged with a load of documents. So like a whole pack of documents, whether that's, like an emergency contact form, an employee contract, a supplier onboarding form, whatever it might be. But in this instance, I'm using a vacancy request form. So let's say I am the finance manager. I'm requesting a new employee. These forms can be dynamic as well. So you can see you've got the post type with some radio buttons and job title. If I click on current, we now have a new field pop up. So the DocuWare forms can react to user input and put more information or more kind of text boxes or whatever it might be on the screen if you need to gather that information as well. But I'm just going to click on new. So I'm just looking for a new accounts assistant, please. And department is finance. And again, I've made these optional, but you can make these mandatory. You can capture various different types of information. And every piece of information you enter can be used as an index field for those documents, but also it can be used to make decisions. So if I'm requesting a new employee for the finance department, maybe it needs to go to the director of finance to be authorized, or if I'm requesting someone in the warehouse, it needs to go to the warehouse director for authorization, that kind of thing. But if I go back to DocuWare, hopefully soon, it'll take a little while just to kick in. I may need to refresh the browser. But here we can see we have a new vacancy request in the tasks, and we also have a new vacancy request in the list. So if I go in here, let's just remove some of these other ones to make it easier. So you can see we have a new vacancy request form in the list. And again, I like the list because it's a way to monitor documents as they're coming through, but they're just saved searches. So it's basically looking for document type vacancy request form status submitted. So if I go back to tasks, and you can see this is assigned to the HR manager, and we can just go ahead and approve that request. You can also take input when people are performing a workflow action. I'm just going to go ahead and confirm that. So once that's been approved, I've configured the workflow to give me an email notification. So shortly we should see, here we go, here's the email to say, hey finance manager, your vacancy request has been HR approved. Please go ahead and start the hiring process, thanks. So it's just a way of kind of managing the authorization of that document and or notifying the relevant people who are past that workflow what they need to do next. So let's pretend that we've gone through the, putting adverts in the paper, interviewing people, and we found our new employee. If we go back to folders, just have a look at the electronic personnel records. So we can see our list of employees here. The reason I've shown you that, if I just fill this out, and again, I've just kind of made most of these fields optional, the speed of the demo. And we can gather text, we can gather dates, we can gather kind of binary choices, we can gather multiple choices, we can gather signatures, we can get the person filling out the form to upload files, whatever that might be. So there's a whole range of choices, and DocuWare gives you a really easy to use form builder so you can create your own forms and manage how they look and what information you want to capture. So the reason I showed you the folders is if I just refresh this, we can see there is now a new electronic employee record for John Smith. And if I go into John Smith's record, I mentioned earlier that by filling out a form, you can create a single document, or you can merge all of the information that's being entered into a whole pack of documents. And that's what I've done here. So we've got the eligibility to work form. And if I zoom in, you can see here John's details, his signature. And if I go back into here, we've got the employment contract. And again, I've just taken that information, and you can pick any information you want from the form and fill out the employee contract and his signature. And also you could email a copy to John to say, thank you for filling out the form. Here's a copy of your contract. And hopefully we should have a task in a moment or so to complete the employee onboarding process. I need to just refresh it. But the idea is, once a new employee has filled out their form, all of their starter pack and their contract has been created, often the next part of the process is to enter their details onto a payroll system, and you can use our AMS export app in order to export those details to make it easier for you. And you might want to then, here we go, so here's the new employee form. You might want to enter in their new employee number, maybe their day's holiday, and this could be really useful if you use a holiday request form in DocuWare, and then it can check to see how many holidays you've got, how many days you've taken, how many days you've got left. And again, that's another example of where DocuWare can help automate that process. Now, the last thing I was going to show that's HR related is kind of training management, because with every employee, there's going to be a certain range of certificates and training that you need to manage on their behalf. And the difficult thing is often knowing when those documents are due for renew. So this is a forklift certificate. So we've got a forklift license. And say this is for John Smith again. And John is in our finance team. If we put in a review date, if we put it in for 2 weeks, now we can see here, we now have a list of documentation for review. And the reason we have this is because I've set it to say anything that's due in 30 days, I want a list of it because I need to plan retraining and recertification to make sure we are compliant with our employee requirements. So you can see here, I've got the forklift license. And we can trigger a task to say, update the license, update the review date, and maybe append a new certificate. So hopefully that's given you some ideas about where DocuWare might fit in with HR. And the last thing I was going to show you is electronic signatures. And this has become quite a popular topic of conversation, with hybrid working environments. Getting contracts signed by people can take a bit longer and can be a bit more tricky. And DocuWare is now compatible with DocuSign, which is great because it's the main signature service that everybody recognizes. And to demo how this works, I've just set this up for a sales contract. But again, you can set it up for whatever documents that you want to. So you can see I've got a store dialog for sales contract for signature. To fill out the fields, we can use DocuWare single-click indexing, so we don't have to type anything in, which also avoids kind of human error when you're typing that information in. You might want to type in the name, email address, and phone number so that you can use multi-factor authentication for the recipient to kind of sign the document and prove who they are. And what will happen is I will receive an email shortly to say here we go, I have a new document for sign off. And if we have a look on my mobile phone, we can also see here's the document that we need to sign. So let's see what it's like doing this on a mobile phone. So if we open the document, obviously you have to agree to terms and conditions. Here's the document again, you can kind of zoom in to read it, go straight to the sign page, do your signature and click on finish. And that's it. So within a couple of seconds, I've finished signing my document, it's all done. And you can see DocuWare has emailed me a copy of my signed document so that I can store that for my own records or for my own reassurance. I've got a copy of that document. what's really quite clever is DocuWare hasn't emailed back a copy of that signed document, so you've got multiple copies of this document. What DocuWare's done is it's actually updated the existing document. So if I go into here and have a look at the signed contract, let's open this in a new viewer window so we can actually see in a bit more detail. So we can see this is the contract that DocuWare has signed. We can browse through the pages. We can see the official DocuSigned signature, but also to prove the eligibility of that signature, DocuSign provides a report, and DocuWare has kind of merged all of that into one document. So you've got proof that that signature is legit. Brilliant. Well, hopefully I've given you some ideas of where DocuWare might be able to help your users and teams. So I'll hand it back to Neil.
Brilliant. Thanks, Damien. So now you're all set and have implemented a document management solution, how does this help you moving forward? So as Damien demonstrated, documents are now being stored centrally and electronically, and they can be moved through a workflow for an electronic sign-off process. And information is now prioritized, allowing businesses to make quicker and more informed decisions, increasing productivity, helping to cut down on any previous delays in the process. And staff workloads are prioritized with tasks, allowing people to focus on what's more important at that time. And finding documents is instant, helping employees find the information they need at the click of a button and answering queries immediately, rather than having to search through the physical filing cabinets. And document privacy is key to a well-maintained document management system, and with granular permissions helping ensure only the right documents are reviewed by the right people. And concerns about compliance, security and privacy, they're a thing of the past. And as Damien showed you, everything is viewable at the click of a mouse, even document workflow tasks and audits. And DocuWare on the move, in the office or remotely from home, it's achievable out of the box. And we're here to help you discover the future of working through technology. And users now have the right tools to hand, providing greater visibility and allowing you to protect the growth of your business. So I do appreciate we've kind of run over a little bit. We were expecting it just to last 30 minutes. But before we do cover any questions that you have asked, we would like to thank you this morning for attending our webinar. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask now, please feel free to post them, and we're going to make some time to go through them now.
Great stuff. Thanks, Neil. I don't know if you can see in the list of questions, there seems to be a couple around integrating with other systems, particularly with Sage. I don't know if you want me to take this, Neil. Yeah, sure. Brilliant. So I don't know if you kind of can go back to when we did the GL coding and the authorization and then did the export. So this is the reason that we created the AMS export tool, is to integrate with other applications. So DocuWare doesn't have like a native application integration with Sage or SAP. And I think that's because it's harder to maintain compatibility with different versions and the kind of stability of that integration. So the way DocuWare does it is at the data layer. So any ODBC compliant data source, such as Sage, SAP, whatever it might be, we can export the data that you need so that Sage can have like a routine import to import that information and update those records. And that's how we've integrated with Sage and SAP and Microsoft Dynamics. And we've done some pretty tight integrations, which have created some really good automated processes, flagging invoices to say that they can be paid in the system and the payments are being released automatically, updating stock and ordering systems, that kind of thing. And if it's something that you wanted to talk about, we'd be more than happy to spend some time with you to understand how you're thinking of that integration working for you. There's another question around, is this cloud or on-premise? I don't know if you want to take that, Neil.
Yeah, sure. So it comes in both flavors. So we've got the on-premise software, which is based on the modules that Damien's kind of gone through today. And obviously we have the cloud as well, which actually Damien used during the demonstration today. So it's kind of an all-encompassing, all self-managed system. Yeah, so it comes in both flavors. There is a question as well about how DocuWare handles paper documents, invoices in through the post. So it's quite a good example, actually. I think we kind of touched on it, but essentially if you are still receiving paper invoices via the post, these can indeed be scanned in via an MFP device, or if you've got a desktop scanner, maybe if it's duplex, if it's double-sided, but they can be picked up by the monitored folders in DocuWare and then pushed into either directly, if we capture the right information, or they can be sort of imported directly into a document tray ready for processing with the relevant team.
Cool. I've got another question up here about intelligent indexing. Could you explain a bit more about intelligent indexing and OCR? So often with data capture or document capture solutions, you'll use something called zonal OCR, which is basically saying, pick this piece of information from exactly this area, or this piece of information from exactly this area. And DocuWare has that, but it also has the intelligent indexing. And this is more about recognizing patterns. So DocuWare captures the document, and whether that's a document or an image doesn't matter, as long as the information is typed information, and uses optical character recognition technology to basically to scan that document and try and read those characters and turn them into data. And what it's doing is often you have this 80-20 situation where 80% of your invoices come from 20% of your suppliers, and it will quite quickly, normally within 3 invoices, build up a pattern for that particular supplier, and then the intelligent indexing will start being more and more confident in capturing that information next time. So hopefully that kind of answers the question for you. I also got a question around capturing from email, because I know that I showed the Outlook connector where you're manually right-clicking and storing, but I've got someone saying that we receive a lot of our invoices to a dedicated email account, and how would that work? You know, do we have to manually store them each time? So DocuWare has like a mail services connector as well as an Outlook connector, and this will monitor the account itself, and you can apply rules and say, I only want to pick up the attachments from emails where the subject field includes the word invoice or whatever that might be. But if you have a dedicated email account, DocuWare can automatically watch it and capture the email, the attachment, or the email and attachment, and move those into the document trays ready for indexing and storage. Bro, I think that's it on my side. I don't know if you had any more questions now.
No, I can't see any. We'll just give it a little longer if anyone else does have any questions. There's one here actually, Damien, about I know we've discussed exporting data from from DocuWare, but does it can you also pull information in from Sage as an example?
Yeah, sorry, that's something I didn't discuss or show in the demo. Apologies for that. So with this data layer integration, which also means that it's kind of universal, so it doesn't matter if it's Sage or SAP or whatever systems you might be using. There is a tool in DocuWare called AutoIndex, which means that as part of a process, AutoIndex can link to another data source, whether that's Sage or something else, to either read. So if you receive a purchase order and that purchase order number, if you receive an invoice and that invoice has a purchase order number on it, we could do a lookup and say, is there a record with this purchase order number? Does the amount of that record equal the amount of the invoice? If so, do that. So we can query a data source. We can also retrieve information. So we could say, okay, here's the invoice number, bring me back the purchase order number and assign that to the document in DocuWare. So we can read, we can retrieve, but we can also update. So in the SAP example I gave you earlier, a project that we worked on was to receive documents and then flag them in the SAP database that they've been received in order for it to kind of release the payment for that transaction. Hopefully that kind of covers that off for you. But if you have any further questions, if you want more detail, feel free to email us. If you don't have our direct email addresses for your account managers, I think Neil's got some information on the screen as to who you can contact as well.
We've got a question here that's just popped in. We're not very technical, is that okay? So a very good question. So essentially we, as AMS, we're based in Dorset. We manage all of our projects from sort of a pre and post sales process. So we essentially hold your hand through the entire process, and we do have a support team down here as well, which can assist with sort of moving your project forward. And yeah, essentially we're here to sort of help you if it's not a familiar territory, document management, through our sort of initial calls and demonstrations. We can provide as much information as you need really to assist you in making that decision and moving it forward. Final one, Damien, how does the consultancy and training work?
Sure, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, if that's okay.
Brilliant. So what we'll generally do is we'll sit down and we'll do a scope, which is basically a process map of what you're doing at the moment, so that we can take the practical process and try and provide a digital replication. The idea is not to completely change what people are doing, because it makes it difficult for users, but to just to digitize it to make it quicker and easier. So during the scope and the process map, we'll try and understand your business, understand your process, and get more information about how that works and where DocuWare can kind of help you maybe reduce some of the bottlenecks and provide better access to your users. The next stage is, we would propose a solution and say, okay, this is what we're thinking, and then that might go back and forth a few times until everybody's happy. And then once the system is set up, and we can do that on your behalf, so all we need to know is what you're doing now, how you want it to work. We can produce a system, and then we'll go through a training process. And sometimes that's roles based, so you might have like an accounts assistant who's doing one role, an accounts manager who's doing another role, and we can go through that training for you until you're completely confident in how the system works, so that you can actually use it going forward.
Brilliant, thanks Damien. I think that's all of the questions that have come in from today's session. So yeah, I think we'll end it there, but thanks again for everyone's time and taking the time out of their morning to attend this morning. And if you do have any further questions, there's some contact details which we'll leave on the screen just for a second longer. Please feel free to email or call in, and we'll be happy to help. Thanks very much.